All right, diving in again, folks. Ready for another deep dive? This one is all about, get this, mindfulness immersed in the body.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, right. We've been digging into some Buddhist texts. They really go deep on this practice.
Okay.
And, well, some of the stuff they claim can happen, let's just say it sounds pretty wild.
Really? Like, what kind of stuff?
Well, we'll get to that. But first,
Okay.
what even is this mindfulness in the body thing? Is it just like normal mindfulness, but more physical?
It's definitely related to mindfulness, but instead of that, empty your mind thing, a lot of folks try to do this, is more about, well, the texts encourage us to really, inhabit our physical experience in a way most people, just don't.
So instead of spacing out during our day,
Right.
we're bringing super awareness to every little ache, pain, itch, even just walking or standing. That sounds honestly kind of exhausting.
It can be a shift, for sure, because with regular meditation, you're often trying for that stillness of mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here it's about bringing that same clear observation, but to every single bodily action. It's like instead of being on autopilot, you're suddenly really engaged with each movement, each sensation.
Okay, so it's more about being present all the time, not just during meditation?
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's this image in the text about examining a sack of grain.
A sack of grain? Okay.
Right. Instead of just seeing grain, they're meticulously identifying each type: wheat, rice, beans, you name it. It's that level of close attention, but applied to what's happening in our bodies.
All right, I'm starting to get the picture, but honestly, it sounds both incredible and really hard. What would someone even do to start practicing this? Concrete steps.
So the texts actually lay out 4 main techniques. First one is probably the most familiar, focusing on the breath.
Oh, right. That's Meditation 101.
Yeah. Paying close attention to each inhale, each exhale, all those sensations.
Okay, that makes sense. What are the other 3?
So the second one is all about noting your postures and actions really carefully. Like when you're walking, you're not just walking, you're aware of the weight shifting, how your legs move, even the feeling of your clothes brushing against you.
So no more zoning out while scrolling on our phones in line at the store, huh?
Ideally, no. The point is to break those patterns of not paying attention. Now, the third technique is where things get a little more intense.
Intense how? Physically demanding?
Not exactly. It involves contemplating your body's composition in detail.
Like anatomy?
More than that, we're talking head hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, skin, all your internal organs, kidneys, heart, intestines, even, bodily fluids.
Okay, wow, that's a lot to take in. Why focus on that stuff? It seems kind of unpleasant.
It's meant to challenge how we usually see the body by recognizing it's not this solid, unchanging thing, but all these parts, always changing. It helps us detach from it, see it for what it really is.
I think I see where you're going with this. It's recognizing impermanence, right? Big theme in Buddhism.
Exactly. And it gets even more vivid. There's this whole section about a corpse.
A corpse?
Yeah, like a decomposing one. And the idea is to apply that image to our bodies, to really grasp that this body too, this is its nature, this is its future, there's no avoiding it.
Okay, I get the impermanence tie-in, but wow, that's heavy stuff. So tell me about this 4th technique. Is it more of the same?
This one's about analyzing the body in terms of the 4 elements: earth, water, fire, and wind. They use this analogy of a butcher breaking down a cow to show what they mean.
Wait, a butcher?
It's not as gruesome as it sounds. The point is seeing your body stripped bare without all the ideas we layer onto it. Earth is like our bones, water our fluids, fire the heat, wind our breath.
Okay, so less about actual butchery, more about seeing the basic building blocks. These texts sure use some wild imagery, but what's the point of all this contemplation? Is it just to, accept we're going to die someday?
It's not meant to be morbid. It's about developing equanimity. You acknowledge the impermanence, and it frees you from clinging to the body as your permanent self.
I see. So instead of being so attached to our physical form, we can see it as it is, always changing, ultimately not lasting forever. And that leads to all these benefits you mentioned.
You got it. That shift in perspective is where things start to get interesting.
Okay, now I'm really curious. What exactly are these benefits? We're talking enlightenment or something even more out there?
It's not just enlightenment, though. That's definitely on the table. The text lays out all the benefits. Some are kind of immediate, like you start to gain mastery over your emotions.
Mastery. You never get angry or sad again.
Not quite. It's more that fear, anxiety, even just displeasure, it doesn't have that same hold on you.
So it's not about getting rid of emotions, but not being controlled by them.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's observing them, but not getting swept away. And it's not just emotional stuff either. You supposedly get physically tougher to heat, cold, hunger, thirst, even pain. It all bothers you less.
Wait, hold on. Less bothered by pain? How's that even work?
It's kind of wild, right? They don't totally explain the mechanism, but it's like because you're so aware of your body, you relate to these sensations differently. Instead of that automatic, this is bad, resist it reaction, you can just observe it, and that lessens its grip on you.
Okay, so not pain-free, but like changing how we experience it. I can kind of see that. But you were saying earlier about benefits that are even more than that, almost like superpowers.
Yeah. This is where it gets really interesting. So one of the things this practice is supposed to lead to is attaining the jhanas.
Jhanas, you said that word before. What was it again?
Think of them like levels of super deep meditative absorption, incredible concentration, bliss that's way beyond anything we usually feel. And these jhanas, they're like the gateway to even wilder abilities.
Okay, now we're talking superpowers. Give me some examples. What could you supposedly do?
Well, they talk about being able to appear and disappear at will, walking through walls, thus legitating, even like touching the sun and moon with your hand.
Whoa, we went from mindful breathing to like cosmic powers pretty fast. Are we supposed to take all this literally?
Good question, and one that's been debated for a long time. Some folks say it's all symbolic, like walking through walls isn't about actually phasing through matter, but more what you're mentally free, not limited by usual beliefs.
So not teleporting, but maybe like a sense of possibility, of not being boxed in.
Exactly, and even if we set those more fantastical claims aside, there's still some pretty wild mental stuff, like developing divine hearing, being able to perceive sounds from super far away, and then there's reading minds, seeing people's past lives.
Okay, now that is getting into some woo-woo territory. Is there any, like, scientific proof for any of this?
Most scientists are pretty skeptical, obviously, but there is more and more research coming out about mindfulness, meditation, and how it can really change the brain. Maybe with enough practice, we tap into ways of being aware that we don't even have the science to understand yet.
So not ruling it out entirely, but even just the more down-to-earth benefits, like being less reactive to stuff, that sounds like it takes serious dedication. What are some of the, like, roadblocks people hit when trying to develop this kind of mindfulness?
The text actually talks about that a lot. They knew it wasn't easy. One of the first things they say is you got to find a quiet place to practice. Go to the wilderness, sit under a tree, even find an empty building.
So it's about creating a space free from distractions, right? Makes sense. But not everyone can just run off to a forest retreat every time they want to meditate. What about people in busy cities with jobs and families and all that? How do you find that quiet amidst the chaos?
You're right, it's not always easy, but the text also says the real sanctuary is the one you build inside. It's about finding that inner stillness, no matter where you are, what's going on around you.
So it's a skill, like you could be on a noisy subway, but still have that inner peace through focusing on the breath, the body.
Exactly, it becomes portable, you can take it anywhere, but of course, even with good intentions, distractions happen. They use this really cool analogy to describe it.
Oh, I love a good analogy. Lay it on me.
So picture this, you're at a huge festival, there's this famous beauty queen in the middle, everyone's watching her sing and dance, and you are given a bowl filled to the brim with oil and told to carry it through this massive crowd right between the beauty queen and the audience.
That sounds nerve-wracking. I'd be terrified of spilling. What's the catch?
Oh, there's a catch, all right. A guy with a sword follows right behind you, and if you spill even one drop, he chops your head off.
Yikes. Talk about pressure. I wouldn't be able to focus on anything but that bowl.
Exactly. So the bowl is mindfulness, and that whole crazy crowd, all those distractions, that's everything trying to pull you away from your practice.
So it's about that laser focus, even when things are chaotic, even when it feels kind of dangerous. But in real life, we're not usually dodging swords when we meditate. What are some more everyday challenges?
Well, they warn about Mara gaining entry.
Mara? Is that like a demon or something?
Not a literal being, more like a representation of all the forces that mess with your spiritual progress. Temptation, doubt, clinging to desires, those voices that say you're not good enough. It's all Mara.
So like when your phone buzzes during meditation or you start thinking about your to-do list, those are like modern-day Maras.
Exactly. They're everywhere, even inside us. But the text does offer ways to deal with them. It's all about restraint.
Restraint, like just having willpower?
It's deeper than that. They have this wild image. 6 animals tied together, a snake, crocodile, bird, dog, hyena, and a monkey, all pulling in different directions.
Whoa, that's a lot of animals. What do they represent?
Our senses. Always wanting something, pulling us towards pleasure, distraction. When your mindfulness is weak, these animals run wild. But when it's strong, it's like a sturdy post, holding them all together.
So not denying our desires, but training them so they work with our intentions. Mindfulness is the anchor that keeps us from getting pulled all over the place.
Perfect. And that brings us to an interesting point. The text acknowledges there are different paths to this mastery. They lay out 4 modes of practice, recognizing that what works for one person might not for another.
So with personalized mindfulness, tell me about these 4 modes.
They're about whether the practice feels painful or pleasant, and whether it leads to slow or quick intuition.
Okay, but some paths being pleasant, that's interesting. I always thought mindfulness was about facing tough stuff, pushing through discomfort. What would a pleasant practice even look like?
Well, remember the jhanas, those super blissful states. Those are considered pleasant practices. It's cultivating these refined states of concentration and joy, supposedly way more intense and lasting than any regular pleasure.
So it's like trading fleeting, superficial good times for something deeper, more fulfilling.
That's the idea. And this brings us to a really fascinating passage in the text. I think you'll like this. So, where were we? Yes, those quiet places. The text recommends finding a quiet place to practice mindfulness immersed in the body. But we were saying that it's more about cultivating an inner sanctuary,
Right.
a state of mind, rather than an actual location.
But how do we actually do that? Like bridge that gap? How can we create that stillness when, let's face it, life is usually pretty hectic?
Well, it's a practice, Like anything else, it takes time to develop that ability to tune out the noise and really go inward.
Okay, so baby steps. What, start with 5 minutes a day, just focusing on the breath?
That's a great place to begin. And then you can gradually make those sessions longer, start applying that same awareness to other things you do throughout the day.
So it's not like mindfulness is this separate thing. It's woven into everything. Walking, eating, even washing the dishes can become practice.
Exactly. It becomes a way of being, not just something you do for a certain amount of time. And as you get more familiar with it, you'll find you can access that inner sanctuary more easily, no matter what's going on around you.
That's encouraging. It sounds like it's definitely a journey, not a destination.
Definitely a journey.
Speaking of which, I wanted to circle back to those superpowers that we were talking about earlier. Divine hearing, mind reading, past lives. It's all fascinating, but also kind of hard to wrap my brain around. What if we approach those descriptions as more like metaphors for what deep mindfulness can unlock, rather than literal superpowers?
I like that approach. So instead of thinking of them as supernatural abilities, what if we see them as potentials that emerge as practice deepens?
Potentials. Okay. So for example, divine hearing. Maybe it's not literally hearing things from miles away, but developing a really subtle sensitivity to the energy around you, things you'd normally miss.
Exactly. You become more attuned to the nuances of your environment, the people you're with, and we start picking up on cues that most people wouldn't even notice. It's like you're tapping into a deeper level of perception.
And what about mind reading? Is it really possible to know what someone else is thinking?
Maybe not in a literal sense, but perhaps it's more about developing deep empathy and intuition. Those times when you just sense what someone's feeling without them having to say anything? It's like a sixth sense that allows you connect with others on a deeper level.
We've all had those moments where we feel like we can read each other's minds. And then there's seeing past lives. Maybe there's not about literally accessing past incarnations, but about understanding how everything is interconnected. Like our present moment is shaped by countless past experiences, not just our own, but those of everyone and everything that came before. It's a vast web of cause and effect, stretching across time and space.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's about recognizing that our actions have ripple effects that extend far beyond ourselves, influencing the present and the future. And who knows, maybe as science continues to explore the mysteries of consciousness, we'll discover that some of these abilities that seem supernatural now are actually latent potentials within us, just waiting to be unlocked.
That's a really exciting child. So even if we never learn to walk through walls or teleport, the potential for transformation is still immense.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the key takeaways here. Mindfulness immersed in the body, it's not just a set of techniques or a path to superpowers. It's an invitation to explore who we really are, to discover our full potential as human beings.
We've covered so much ground in this deep dive. We've explored this whole concept of mindfulness immersed in the body. We've learned about the 4 techniques for cultivating it, and we've even delved into some of the pretty mind-blowing potential benefits. I don't know about you, but I'm definitely feeling inspired to explore this further.
It's been an amazing conversation. And as we wrap up, I'd like to leave our listeners with one final thought. The text mentions something called openings to higher knowledges. What do you think those openings might be, and how can we cultivate them in our own lives?
That's a really profound question. Maybe those openings are moments of heightened awareness, flashes of insight, or those times when we feel deeply connected to something bigger than ourselves. Perhaps they emerge spontaneously through practice, or maybe we need to actively seek them out. Either way, it's an invitation to approach our lives with a sense of curiosity and wonder, always open to discovering something new.
Beautifully said. And who knows, maybe as we cultivate this deep awareness of our bodies, we'll find ourselves unlocking not just those openings to higher knowledge, but also a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
That's a journey I'm definitely ready to embark on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of mindfulness immersed in the body. Until next time, happy diving, everyone.